See how these figured woods are a little bit harder to manage. They've got a lot of different shifting points on the grains with the carve. They've got some tear out points. We got this waist area, this strong curl right here is chunking out on me. So it's just about managing the carve, managing your direction of travel, pressure and cut that you're using. These things all affect. Should be nice and smooth when you're done with it. If you make space, the carving just kind of comes together itself. It tells you where it wants to be, as long as you know the lay of the land for your design and how much you have to carve in, how much room you have to carve in for these features, like the recurve and the binding channel edge. Now occasionally you'll have to reset your iron on your plane. things do not take much exposure to make some serious carving happen. So I just gotta get to know your tools pretty well. See these nice bevels starting to happen here. This one's gonna sweep. The waist is gonna sweep like this. They're not gonna round. These are gonna sweep down. Imagine rolling down and back up to this edge here. So cutaways are really the most time-consuming part of this. Obviously, they're a little tight area to get into. So I just try and get, I don't know, I guess I do the easy stuff first. This thing looks pretty well even around the whole thing. I see a couple little bits of line here and there, and that's just fine. I mean, we're talking in fingernails, just enough to catch your fingernail on, if even. So that's where we want to be. We want to, at this point, we want to be in total control of this thing. We don't want to be altering critical dimensions. So we've got nice sweeps down off the waist. You can see the throat popping up here. And then we have nice gentle rolls over the back. So I kind of break this into two different sections of carve. This from the bridge forward, from the bridge back. This is going to be a nice sweeping, rampy type of carve. This is going to be a little more aggressive, throaty, with some nice ridges coming down it. Alright, let's continue on. Also, part of what I mean by making room is you got to make room for the tool to get down to this flat spot. If it's riding up on an edge like this, it's going to have a hard time blending it like flat. So you have to make enough room for that tool to do the job. If there's just not enough room, we'll switch. But I try and get most of the brunt work done with this. It's really quite easy on my hands. So in these areas where it's really tight, I'll get a rasp. One of these little guys, a riffler, and that will just get in and knock some of that stuff back. Highly controlled tool for sculpting. This is really what we're doing at this point, sculpting. So I'm getting pretty tight zone there, which means this ridge has to come down a little bit. See, I've pushed the ridge off center. I'll have to re-establish that when I work in this side. Really want my ridge to be right bisecting the horn. That's the way it looks best, the way the curves look best with the light flashing off of them. And in my opinion, it's right for my product anyway. So all you CNC guys are probably like, I could be doing a fret level and dress right now while the machine's doing this, but that takes away my attachment to it. My hours in it are sweat, blood, and tears. In my opinion, that's what these instruments are about, handcrafting. Not that anybody can CNC, because they can't. It's an art form on its own, and I respect the hell out of those guys, but it's just not for some of these. For some of these, the whole point of them is to carve them by hand, to become attached, to become intimate, to know this wood, to know what tears, what works, what cuts, what it sounds like, how it responds. I don't want a machine just to blindly go over it and go to a preset number. These are uniquely hand carved, each one different. Each one carved to the plate of wood itself. I'm sure I could do the majority of the work with a duplicarver or something, but you know, this is why I got into this. Maybe in a couple years when I can't keep up with orders, this is what gives me peace in my life right here. You'll see a lot of guys leave their where the neck is going to join in. You'll see them, a lot of guys like Gibson's for example, they leave their ramp up high. What I'm doing is I'm just carving it out. It's going to expose the side of the neck, which is a look I really think goes side by side with the acoustic arch top world. So I'm pulling that aesthetic versus leaving a fretboard right down on the top of the body. I like to show a little bit of meat on the side, so it'll keep a nice even 1/4 inch binding line around the whole thing. We won't have that flared binding like you see on the Les Pauls. Just an aesthetic thing. They do it because it's easier. The geometry of the build is easier. The look of the instrument is a certain way when it's done that way, so it's just different than what I'm doing. All right. See that center line shifting back to the center there? The ridge line. Now, starting to establish that slope from the bridge to the heel. You can see it. How I do that is I do a V type of carve. It crosses over in the middle, and we're going from the high point at the bridge to the low point at the end of the horn. Generally, you can follow that carve out on the ridge without getting tear out like we had here. So it's just a nice way to remove some bulk of the wood here. Starts to take a more realistic shape. We start to see a high point, we start to see it sloping gradually down to the ridges there. Keep blending things back into each other at this point. When we're kind of happy with all this, we'll take what we're left here with is again a pretty flat throat with some hard breaks here. We're going to soften all this up by just knocking off the top of it with a plane like that. But I'm going to let it be for a little bit. It'll establish, again, we're trying to establish somewhat of a steady slope going from the high point to the low point here. So I'm just going to leave and start establishing this just as almost a flat ramp. Start to see we got some dimensionality forming in this horn as the carving approaches the rim. It really starts to just, like I said, it creates its own carving when you just follow the steps and keep making room for the tool. It dictates what strokes you're taking here.